Sup mayflies, and welcome to my deck tech for Phenax, God of Deception. This will be a Dimir deck with a main focus on mill, in which Phenax has a crucial role, as he can give all of our creatures an activated mill ability. This deck is filled with cards to build on this mill strategy, whether they deal damage when opponents mill, they gain power for every card in our opponent's graveyards, or they just outright delete your opponent's deck. With so many possible win cons, no one really knows what to expect from your deck, which is exactly how the God of Deception likes it. Let's start off with the mill section of our deck. Memory Erosion, Manic Scribe, and Psychic Corrosion all constantly mill our opponents. This deck also has Rhystic Study and Mind's Eye in it, so you can imagine the mind-boggling amounts of mill that will happen when we combo those with Psychic Corrosion. Dreamer Muse forces our opponents to mill depending on their hand size, while Mind Grind provides a single mass mill effect. This can also help to deal with God Eternals. Both the Fairies and Sphinx's Tutelage allow us to mill one opponent whenever we draw a card, and Miracle Vase allows us to mill every opponent he deals damage to. Either focus the most threatening player or strike deals with the other players to make the most out of these effects. Considering the unique nature of this deck, Table Politics will be a very potent tool to ensure our victory. Fraying Sanity and Keening Stone mill one opponent depending on the size of their graveyards. We have ways of dealing with graveyard decks later, so don't be afraid to target them for maximum amounts of mill. One of the strongest cards in this deck is Bruvok, the Grandiloquent from the new Jumpstart set. Every time an opponent has to mill, they now have to mill twice as much. Combine him with Fleet Swallower or Traumatize to instantly delete an opponent's deck. Even when you don't have the entire combo, his power to double all the mill from both Phenax and all the other mill cards we have still makes him insanely useful for us. Instead of milling our opponents to death, we also run plenty of cards to kill our opponents the old-fashioned way. Bonehorde, Night Howler and Mortivore all get stronger for each creature card that's in a graveyard. Considering we are constantly filling graveyards to the brim via our mill cards, creatures like this will become huge in this deck. Bonehorde's Living Weapon ability gives it extra staying power, while Night Howler's Bestow gives it a second chance once the enchanted creature dies. Meanwhile, Mortivore can also regenerate for 1 black. We also run White of Priest in 6, but he doesn't have any other spicy effects. The King of Dimir Undergrowth, however, is Consuming Aberration. Not only does he provide mill, he scales with every card in graveyards, so not just the creature cards. Next up is Lazav, Dimir Mastermind, and Reanimate, to steal your opponent's win cons. After playing some mill cards, you should have plenty to choose from. We also run Undead Alchemist, which can give us a very wide board of zombie tokens. All of those creatures can be used to attack, but they can also be tapped with Phenax to mill even more. Bloodchief Ascension, Sir Conrad, and Duskmeadow Guildmage all deal damage to opponents whenever they mill. All these have insane combo potential with Mindcrank, often outright winning you the game since they create an infinite loop of mill and damage. These will also be your best bet at beating an Eldrazi deck because they are near impossible to mill. Of course, your opponents are not just going to sit by and watch us destroy their decks. That's why we're going to need to put some walls between us and our opponents. Amaranthine Wall, Wall of Frost, and Wall of Lost Thought serve as excellent blockers to keep our enemy creatures at bay, while also having some neat effects. We also run Tree of Perdition, which allows you to set an opponent's health total to 13, while also gaining a blocker with 40 toughness. And in case you forgot, this means that with Phenax, you can tap this bad boy to mill someone for 40 cards. Next we run Riddle Keeper and Propaganda to deter our opponents from attacking us, and if they still decide to attack us, it will at least cost them quite a lot. Graveyard decks like Muldrotha can be quite problematic against our deck, as we are kinda doing their job for them by tossing their entire decks into their graveyards. That's why we need some graveyard hate. Eater of the Dead allows us to exile problematic creatures while also creating an infinite loop with Phenax, provided the opponent runs enough creatures of course. See, you can tap Eater of the Dead to mill an opponent for 4. Use its ability to exile a creature, untap it, and then repeat this process until the opponent's deck is gone. In case of emergency, we also run Crypt Incursion and Ashok, the Dream Render, to quickly put an end to all graveyard shenanigans. Be wary though, as this also messes with our own graveyard shenanigans. Then onto the blue commander staples. Counterspell, Cyclonic Rift, and Mana Drain are all extremely good at stopping, well, whatever the enemy wants us to do. Then Drawn in the Log serves both as a good counterspell as well as targeted removal. Price of Fame, well, it's become my new favorite card to kill commanders lately, and Toxic Deluge is another way for us to wipe the board. Finally, every blue deck needs a Jace, so we run Jace Memory Adept to make our opponent's memory inept. Our deck can do a lot, but we do need the right cards to do so. Vampiric Tutor and Demonic Tutor will help us find just the cards we need. Rhystic Study, Phyrexian Arena and Mind's Eye provide a constant flow of cards, and Mind's Eye also provides a nice opportunity for mind tricks. Since you are always keeping mana open for Mind's Eye anyway, your opponents won't see your counterspell coming. And if you decide not to play a counterspell, at least you can still use the mana for card draw. Dig Through Time, Into the Story, and Sire of Stagnation draw us cards while also having very nice synergy with our mill archetype. Fact or Fiction provides nice card draw and also functions as a political tool. As our final draw card, we run Ponder. Of course, we can't do any of this without mana, so let's move on to the mana part of this deck tech. Both Arcane Signet and Soul Rock are obvious inclusions, and we'll also run Thought Vessel to get rid of our maximum hand size. Dimir Locket, Dimir Signet and also Talisman of Dominance provide us with the colored mana we need. For more standard mana rocks we run Mind Stone, Commander Sphere and Darksteel Ingot. Pro tip, don't forget to sacrifice Commander Sphere whenever someone tries to destroy it. Less conventional is the inclusion of King Makar, but we can reliably get him tapped with Phenax and his creature removal is very useful. Our last ramp card is Gilded Lotus. Now let's move on to the lands. We're in black, so we start off with Cable Coffers and Urbok, Tomb of Yawgmoth, who form a nice combo together, and also Urbok makes it so that our colorless lands can also tap for black. Temple of the False God and Ancient Tomb provide some extra ramp, while Reliquary Tower gets rid of our hand size limit. Next we have a whole bunch of dual colored lands. Choked Estuary, Darkshick Shores, Dimir Aqueduct, Drowned Catacomb, Morphic Pool, Sunken Hollow, Watery Grave, and Underground Sea. All can tap for either blue or black and will often enter untapped. Dismal Blackwater, Jwar Isle Refuge, and Temple of the Seed do enter tapped, but they also give us a nice enter the battlefield effect. Not to mention, Temple of the Seed gives us 10 flavor bonus points. Finally, we also run Dreadship Reef to store floating mana and to help with color fixing in case we need it. We also run Command Tower and Exotic Orchard. In case we steal a creature with an ability, it's nice to have access to your opponent's mana colors as well. Rogue's Passage can make sure that one of our buffed creatures gets through, while Maze of It can stave off an attacking creature. And Ghost Quarter can get rid of problematic land cards. In case we need some more graveyard hate, we run Bejuka Bog and Scavenger Grounds. Both Castle Ventress and Castle Locthwain are always good inclusions, so we run them as well. While they do enter tapped, Halimar Depths and Mortuary Mire's effects more than make up for it. Keep in mind that we can always mill ourselves if we don't like the cards we get to see with Halimar Depths, and Mortuary Mire can get our Eater of the Dead back if we accidentally mill it. Finally, we run 2 mana things in the form of Nephalia Drownyard and Duskmantle, House of Shadow. Then we top it all off with 4 islands and 3 swamps. Now, before you go, I have 2 alternative ways that you can also build this deck that I'd like to share with you. For starters, you can add self-mill options to your Phenax deck with cards like Gloom Surgeon, Mesmeric Orb and Tunnel Vision. Then you can win the game with Laboratory Maniac, Tessa's Oracle or Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. For option 2, you can go full on wall tribal. Basically, you want to replace all mill cards by walls and protection cards to keep Phenax on the board. Then tap all the walls to mill your opponents down. Whether you keep in the damage cards or combos is of course up to you. That brings us to the end of this deck tech. I hope it was of some help. The decklist and music are both linked in the description below. If you have any suggestions on how to make this deck even cooler, please share them in the comments. Also feel free to comment which commander you want to see next. Thanks for watching and have fun building your own Phenax deck. Cheers!